So this kind of looks like two large footprints.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jaster with the Southeast Bigfoot Research Organization, and tonight we've got a very special thing going on with you guys, and hopefully everybody appreciates what we got going on tonight. So, what we've got is a interview with the guy that founded the Indiana Bigfoot Mapping Project. Did I get that right? Is that what you were calling it? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, we might have to work on that one, but more or less, this guy right here that I've got on the mic with me tonight is the most prominent modern Bigfoot researcher in the Hoosier State. And why is that important? Well, Indiana is not known particularly for Bigfoot, and a lot of people don't like the idea of it, okay? And as someone that grew up in the Hoosier State, I can tell you personally that there's a lot of things going out in those woods that a lot of people don't like to talk about in general. So, whenever I went on to Reddit and one day I was just scrolling on through trying to see what people were talking about, I came across this map and I got in a conversation with the guy, and the rest is history. So, first, let's go ahead and introduce you, sir. What's your name? And go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself before we start the questions.
Hi, I'm Eric. I spent 6 months working on that Bigfoot mapping project. And I could say that I'm definitely pretty educated on the subject now. I don't really want to call myself the ultimate researcher of Indiana because there is a lot of good other teams like Squatch Hauler, Indiana, located in Bloomington, or I do respect some of Leroy Nail's work, even if I disagree with a lot of his opinions. But I'm kind of where do I go from here? Sorry.
No,
Uh,
so let's go ahead and start with what got you into Bigfoot? Okay.
so I kind of grew up being interested in the subject. I watched Monster Quest. There was this cartoon called Secret Saturdays that was released in 2008. I like that. And there's also Harry and the Hendersons, which I used to enjoy. I thought those were all pretty fun, even though I wasn't really that big on the subject. I did I would say I believed when I was like 4, but I mean, that was back when I believed that Santa was real, so it's not really saying much. Eventually, probably when I was around like 10, I was just done with Sasquatch. In 2012, there was like the Sasquatch Genome Project and all sorts of other hoaxes that just made this subject sound totally ridiculous. And at that point, it's hard to really believe anything you see. So like, it's weird that the Patterson Gimlin film was like just the gold standard even after like 40 years, and there's nothing else that could really compete with it. Um, so back then I probably would have gave the Sasquatch a 10% chance of existing, and really the only thing that I'd say it has going for it. Sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. The only thing it really has going for it is the thousands of sightings back then, and who knows how many it really has. Based on the map I've made, it could be like 50,000 because I've found 4 times as many that are listed on the BFRO, and the BFRO has a total of like 7,000 reports. So you multiply that by 4, and you get like 50,000. So um, that was that's my stance on the subject. There was a there was one point actually. I won't really go into that. Okay, sorry. Might want to cut a little bit of that out. My bad.
Oh
Uh,
no, no, it's all great. Don't worry about it. So you got into it from an early age, and you kind of had a moment where you're like, if Santa's not exactly real, then Bigfoot probably isn't, right? So you're going through your life. You're growing up in southern Indiana, and what made you change your stance on the subject?
Um, so I actually did have an encounter when I was 14. That was in 2018, now 8 years ago. But I still like remember this so well. I guess I'd call it a flashbulb memory, sort of, where you just remember everything like it was pretty much a month ago or yesterday. So the creature really did look how people describe it. Now, on my map, it's crazy how consistent all these reports are. I'd say like 90% of people describe the exact same thing, where it has long arms, broad shoulders, and is bipedal, very human-like. So I guess I'll just give you a run through on my sighting. I'll try to get a little more detailed than I did in my YouTube video that I made recently. So the weather on this day was decent. I would say it was 55 degrees, which, I mean, back in December, that was pretty good, I'd say. And I decided to ask my parents if we could go on a drive. You can see deer and so many other animals while the forest is lacking leaves and stuff. So I figured we'd see something, and I really didn't expect that I would see a Sasquatch. So I just basically stared out the rear window the entire time, just scanning for any sort of animals I could find, like birds, deer, whatever. And the only thing I did see besides the Sasquatch was a large red-tailed hawk in a tree. I remembered seeing that, so it just tells you how much I remember this day. Um, Eventually, we drove past the lake, and I think my dad made a weird turn. I'm not really sure exactly what road he went on from there. So we drove through French Lick and then to the lake, and we didn't continue on the highway, I'm pretty sure. So I just continued staring out the window, and eventually, while I was looking, we just like drove right past the creature that I saw. So it was in the middle of somebody's driveway, and from its size compared to the driveway, I estimated it to be between 7 and 8 foot tall. The color was like jet black, like sort of like a black bear, and the creature was like entirely covered in hair, from what I could see, minus the face, which I think was hairless mostly. I couldn't really tell because the sun was like shining directly on the creature, so I couldn't really see the face. And also, its feet weren't covered in hair either, so they were like a gray color. Um, the hair looked to be longest on the back of the neck and the arms, but much shorter on its torso region, interestingly. So, of course, it swayed its arms back and forth, just like the Patterson Gimlin film. And would say the leg was extended at a 50-degree angle, just like the creature that walks in the Patterson Gimlin film. There was a sagittal crest with a noticeable brow ridge. And of course, the arms were super long. That was always a detail that stuck out to me. And it's a detail that stuck out to me in all the reports I've looked at. So I think they might have went past the knees, but of course they were extended, so I couldn't really see how comparable they were to its proportions.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it was extremely similar to the Patterson Gimlin film. The only difference is that it was definitely not female. I didn't see any breasts or anything like that. I also would say it was a lot skinnier. Like the creature in the Patterson Gimlin film, it does look very broad and different. This was very lean. So I did notice that the legs looked pretty short as well compared to the torso. I want to say that face was a darker color, like maybe like a dark brown. I'm not 100% sure on that because of the sun, but um, the arms and legs were also very muscular, and I'm not sure if it was like actually big boned and wasn't actually muscles. Could be something like that. So I was just like totally stunned by this because I mean obviously that flips your world. You go on believing that Sasquatch most definitely doesn't exist, and then you see it and it's like what the heck. So I literally sat in the car for 5 minutes trying to like rationalize what I just saw. Like holy crap, there's apparently some kind of human species that we don't even recognize living here in North America. The Patterson Gimlin film was real. There's just so many crazy things going through my head. So after 5 minutes, I eventually told my family who was in the car with me. I was like, I just saw Bigfoot, and they all had different reactions. My dad actually reacted by saying it didn't really surprise him because I've had several other instances where I've seen like animals that are just really hard to see while driving. Like this one time I saw a deer that was like hiding in a bush, and he was like really impressed by that. So I've had a lot of instances like that. My sister also actually had a possible experience back in 2008, so she was like, "I told you so." Um, so currently, I really want to find out where the house this took place was and where the driveway was, so I could just like really prove where this took place. And maybe the owners have seen something or heard something, you know. So I haven't had much luck with that yet, but eventually I'm probably going to find out where this took place because I do spend quite a bit of time in Crawford. So that's the basic rundown of my first encounter. But I had another experience at Young's Creek, and the more I think about it, the more it's like I think this probably was an encounter. I don't want to 100% say that. I didn't even include this on the map because it's just so not. There's just no confirmation there. Do you want me to go ahead and tell that, or would you have any questions?
Well, we can maybe do that one here in a little bit. So, just to recap here, so you've had your own encounter here, and that brought everything back into perspective for you. And so now you're going through and you're getting other reports from other places within Indiana. You're compiling all these things for everybody, right? Now, the thing that I kind of want to get out of the way for everybody listening is I'm going to try and ask some questions that are kind of verifiers, right? Are you familiar with bears?
Yes, and I have had a few people like I talked about this sign at school, unfortunately, because I'm a moron. But there was a lot of people that were like, "Oh, you just saw a bear." No, like obviously bears don't have long arms, and this was in December. So if you look at the hibernation season of bears in Kentucky, this they wouldn't be hibernated at this time. So this was
Right.
December 14th. So that pretty much debunks any possibility that this was a bear. Also, there's no way this was a guy in a costume. That would just be a weird thing to be doing, walking around in a Bigfoot costume with a very expensive looking Bigfoot costume at that.
Absolutely. I just got to ask that kind of thing because whenever people are like, "Hey, I had an
So,
account and everything," people want to hear it, you know? The other thing that I like to point out is like bears don't move the way Bigfoot does. And if people have ever had any experiences with the former or the latter or both, they will all say the same thing. It does not look like a bear. It does not walk like a bear.
yeah,
So that's something that definitely stood out to you whenever
the only
you seen it.
where it could possibly be confused with a Bigfoot is like maybe like that uh the Provo Canyon video. Right? So there's like a Bigfoot hunched over, or what's supposedly a Bigfoot hunched over. That video could be fake, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a big bear" at first, but then it stands up, and they're like, "Oh no, it's not a bear." So there
Mm-hmm.
could be a situation like that where you see a black bear, and you're like, "Oh, that's a mass. It might be a Bigfoot." But like overall, there's just I don't think there's any situation where, for the most part, people can confuse a bear for a Bigfoot. And what else was I going to say? I was going to say something. Crap.
But you said you had a second encounter.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and get into that?
So this was 2020. It could have been May. Yeah, I think it was May. It also could have been late April. I'm not exactly sure when this took place. Um, Sorry, I accidentally left my. Accidentally. Yeah. Okay, I fixed it. Actually, just recently, I decided to hike at Young's Creek where I had this encounter, and I did the entire 11-mile stretch, and I camped overnight to see if I could have anything weird happen. And I actually did find two relatively bizarre footprints that I'll include in a future YouTube video. So they were both like 14 inches, and I'd say maybe 2.5 feet apart. So I want to say it's human, but I can't really say 100%. And I definitely think it's important to approach everything with skepticism. So as for the sighting, um, this encounter happened in late April. No, I already said that. Sorry.
It's okay.
So my mom moved near this area and saw a rat snake on the road. I like I'm always into herpetology, so like snakes, reptiles, whatever. I think they're awesome. So since she saw the snake on the road, she's like, "Yeah, we should check out Young's Creek and see if we find anything interesting going on there." So we didn't go very far into the trail before things actually started happening that were strange. Remember, we drove past this prominent drainage pipe that you'll see at the beginning of the trail, and I think it wasn't really too much further than that where we started feeling uncomfortable. So it's a definitely a paranoia feeling. I wouldn't really describe it as 100% like you feel like you're being watched, but it feels like you're just overcome with this very weird paranoia, like something's there and you have no idea what it is, and it's also probably dangerous. So we kept on going, and eventually, like, there was this species called chorus frogs. They're pretty recognizable with their small size and great color. And they were just all over the freaking trail. jumping towards us rather than away from us. So in my recent hike at Young's Creek, I did see a chorus frog, but of course it like left the trail as soon as I was there. It didn't like jump towards me. So it's almost like something was freaking them out and making them go towards us for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
The forest was very quiet as well. Like you couldn't hear birds, you couldn't hear locusts, you couldn't hear anything. So eventually my mom was just like, perhaps this is like Native American land. I have this really bad feeling like maybe Native Americans don't want us there. There's like all this sorts of superstition about European settlers taking their land and them not being happy about it and cursing land or whatever. So she was kind of approaching it with that angle. But we continued, and we never actually heard anything move through the trees or anything like that. But I just really get the feeling that like we were being pursued the entire time and something was like in the woods watching us. So eventually we decided to turn around because we heard a massive tree like fall down as if it was like pushed over. And that's like not something you hear while hiking very often. I've hiked like 40 miles this year, actually closer to 50, and I have not heard a tree fall at all in my entire career of hiking, which is just pretty strange. I think I would have heard something by now if it was like a normal everyday thing to hear trees fall or whatever. Okay, sorry, rambling on.
No.
um, so I think. Sorry, I keep accidentally closing it. So my impression was that the creature was trying to just get us to leave. It wasn't like menacing, wasn't trying to like kill us or anything like that. I think it just wanted us out of there because of like it was territorial or something like that. I don't really feel like that was a dangerous situation. And I guess since I hiked and spent a night there and I'm completely fine now, like maybe it's not so dangerous to pursue this subject.
I will say
So
something that might help you out here is that there's a couple of community names within the Crawford County area, at the very least, that does indicate that there were Native American tribes in the area. Like Patoka is a tribe, and that's in the northwestern part of Crawford County, and mostly around Patoka Lake, right? But you also have Marengo and the Marengo Caves, and you have the Wyandotte Caves. All of these are all Native American tribes that were in the area. So there is quite a lot of history about that kind of subject in the local history. So you're not too far off the mark, I don't think, with some of that. I do think the relationship between these things and the Native Americans is something that like can be infinitely studied. Now, the next question I've got is you've got the database, right? Where are the most sightings in Indiana? And like maybe give us the top three hotspot areas in Indiana, and why do you think that these are Bigfoot hotspots?
okay, so the top three are Monroe, Jennings, and Brown County. So Monroe is by far the most. It has like literally double all the others. Like if you combine the second and third place, it's exactly the same amount. So I think the main reason for Monroe having so many sightings is that there's just so many people researching in that area. So there's obviously some bias there. So you have Leroy Nail spending a bunch of time in that area. There's the Squatch Hauler Indiana team that is like I don't think they've ever even been outside of Monroe County. So I think that's the main reason for all the sightings there. Now, Brown County is actually I'd say a pretty overrated hotspot. But there is like definitely some recent sightings that have happened there.
Real quick, just for people to understand where exactly you're talking about the general city areas of Bloomington through Nashville, right, in the central southern Indiana.
Yeah, so most of South Central Indiana has a quite a few reports going on there. I think that is because I would say the South Central part of Indiana is also like I say it's like the most forested part of Indiana. Like you could easily get lost in the forest down there with
Mm-hmm.
compared to like it's also very hilly as well. So I don't know if Sasquatch prefers like hilly areas, but um, that's definitely quite the good habitat if I were like some ape living in the woods.
No, it makes complete sense. Like, you gotta have some amount of shelter, you would think.
Yeah.
Now, whenever you're listening to people, you're taking their calls or you're talking to them, right? Are people describing a certain type of Bigfoot in Indiana? Like in a lot of cases, say in the Northwest, when we're talking about Oregon and Washington, they're talking about something that's more ape-like in mannerisms or in description. And more where we do our research in the South, you kind of get a mix. You get some that sound more ape, and then you get some that sound kind of more human-like. So I was kind of curious, what do you see in Indiana? Do you see a particular type? Do you see a mix of things? Like, what do you see? And what kind of strange things have you seen?
I would say literally 90% describe like pretty much the same creature as the Patterson B1 film, which is just so insane to think about. Like, you go down south and you have reports of orangutans. Like, basically, that's what they describe. And there's of course like the Gugly, which is the devil monkey or the whatever you want to call it, which is described more like a baboon. But I haven't heard like any of that from Indiana. There's only been one report where I've heard somebody describe that they saw an orangutan that was on Sasquatch Chronicles, and I think they were totally lying, or not really lying. I think they're just crazy. But and then like really all the baboon encounters that I've heard, they were all from like the 1800s, back when people didn't really even know how to describe Sasquatch. So most of the reports are like your wild man, where it's half man, half ape, and it's extremely consistent. So long arms, broad shoulders, everything going on there.
Okay. Now, what are they doing in these reports most often? Like, I would say if you're, because we're kind of more of a data analytics team here so far, up until we start getting more funding to go out in the field. So what we see more often than not are roadside crossings, right? Especially in certain larger areas, if you want to talk about like Canada, things like that, right? Like most people are seeing these things while they're on the road. People can see them out while they're hunting, fishing. Like I'm an avid fisherman myself, so like that's kind of how I get out in the field. But do you see, is there a certain profile that you have started to develop when it comes to these sightings?
I want to work more on my map next year. I'm just taking a bit of a hiatus because I spent so much effort on it recently. But I do want to like tally up like what times of the month, or actually I already did that. I want to find out what times of the day that most sightings take place. I want to also like maybe look at the um, like locations in comparison to like how close they are to rivers and roadways and stuff like that. So I think that's some very important information. But it does seem like the creature is probably nocturnal, as a lot of people have theorized, and that makes a lot of sense because all the wildlife around here, like deer, are primarily nocturnal as well. So I'd say like pretty much all the road crossing stories I've heard, besides like maybe two or three, took place after dark, and that's of course the best time for a creature that wants to be hidden to cross the road. So there's that. And what else were you wanting to know?
So, sorry. I guess my big question is, are you seeing any sort of a behavioral pattern when it comes to these things? Like, how often do you get people talking about these things being hostile? Are these things largely curious? Like, whenever you talk to people, are they generally afraid? Like, that's something that I've always found really fascinating, is how do people react to seeing one of these things and then going and talking to someone like ourselves.
People are definitely very afraid. I would be too if I saw in person, but I didn't wasn't like a course face to face with it. I was probably like 150 foot away from it when I had a sighting. I didn't see its face. I'm sure if I saw its face, I would have probably got some serious uncanny valley. But
No, like, are you seeing, like, how are people reacting to these things? Are you seeing any sort of behavioral profile emerge or any sort of location profile, that kind of thing?
I think that they very well might follow waterways, as a lot of people have theorized. And from what I've seen, seems like the. Sorry, I'm just getting nervous and.
No, it's all good. So I know we were talking earlier. We were talking about potentially you talking about some Crawford County sightings. that you potentially haven't talked about before?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've created a list of signs that I remember going over. You want me to start talking about a few of those?
Yeah, like which ones did you find the most interesting? Like personally, I'm kind of invested in the in the south of Indiana, right? That's where I grew up. That's where I had my encounters, right? And I could also say that all of the encounters that we had were night based as well. And even though we weren't able to get a visual on the thing, there was a lot of things that were going on that were Bigfoot related and not necessarily human or
Yeah.
bears, right? So I was just kind of curious because I know we were talking about some things out there, and like, what are some really interesting ones that you got in the bank?
Okay. Well, I would actually say Sasquatch is probably more curious than like aggressive or anything like that. I think a lot of reports it like goes to a campsite to see what's going on, just making sure like um, people aren't like being reckless or gonna harm them at all. And I also think that yeah. Okay, let's continue. So, if you want me to go over Crawford County sightings?
Yeah, let's see. Like, because I've always been curious. I know the BFRO has a couple in there. The one that they have listed for Crawford County is at the Blue River, and I've heard of people having things over on that side. But I know personally that the other side of the county's got to be active as well. So, like, what did you get? I'm curious.
So, I bought this book called The Historical Bigfoot. It's said to be like the best of its kind when it comes to old newspaper clippings of Bigfoot. And there actually was a sighting in I think Eckerty from like 1883, which is the oldest report that I consider to be credible that I've found relating to Sasquatch. So that it goes all the way back there. But I haven't heard of much going on between that and the 1990s. So the first report I have listed on this document I have of Crawford County sightings I've researched is there was a large footprint that was found near Tazewell. I feel like it was 1993, but like the guy who found it, he noticed that like all the grass around the footprint was matted down. So that's pretty interesting. You could see how something did in fact walk through it. He didn't take a photo. I mean, that was like the 90s. So, but that was a pretty cool report. Um, Now the second one I have listed is a man that said he saw two deer jump into Patoka Lake in the 90s, and he said there was like a dark figure in the woods that he saw pursuing them, and then like eventually I don't know what happened from there. There's a phantoms and monsters. I think that's I haven't been able to find it in like archives or anything, but I'm pretty sure phantoms and monsters used to have an article about a person who had a rocks thrown at them while they were at Patoka Lake in Crawford County. Now the last sign from the 90s was this person that I'll call her name was Brandy. Now I don't want to like give her full name because like there's just so much scrutiny involved in the subject. I don't think anybody should have their full name attached to it. But when she was like 9 years old, she was at this place called Buzzard Roost, a campground, and she saw a Sasquatch cross the road. She described it just like everybody else, long arms, sagittal crest, and she was actually like I asked her, and she said she was perfectly fine with having her name attached to this, but I still don't want anybody to get criticism. So that's why I keep like everything anonymous. Um, she actually did say that like this was probably just 2 weeks after she saw Black Panther in that same area. Now, Larry Batson, who was like probably the best researcher to ever come from our state, actually used to theorize that mountain lions will sometimes have their kills stolen by Sasquatch. So maybe that's why they were seen close together. Brandy did say that she like kind of theorized that they were like interacting in some way if they were seen so close together. But anyways, the first encounter I've heard from the 2000s was so this is just like your mom's encounter actually, where they were driving near a cornfield, and then this woman said her daughter saw a black figure walking through the cornfield, and like obviously the corn stalks are too tall for anything to be appearing above them, but they said there was like this black figure standing above the corn stalks. So like what could it be? It's not a bear. It couldn't really be a human. So they just concluded that it must have been a Sasquatch that she saw. Now, in the 2010s, I was messaged by, this song is from the 2010s. So I was messaged by a person on Reddit who said that they also had another Patoka Lake encounter. And they said they heard, this was after dark, they heard something bipedal run through the woods. And they think it could have been like just some tweaker, but at the same time, it's just a really weird situation for that to, for them to just hear something bipedal run through the woods after dark like that. Now, I think this was also probably in the 2010s. So there is actually a biologist that messaged me. Um, uh, he's actually a herpetologist. That's pretty much the type of biologist. But he said he had rocks thrown at him in Crawford County, and I don't want to go into any detail about him because obviously, if you you're going to have your reputation ruined if you're a biologist and you come forward with this. So the final sign I have listed here is person that messaged me on Reddit, that was so on Reddit I did talk about my sighting. That's why I've got a lot of these reports. So a person said in December 2021 they saw a Sasquatch cross their driveway and go down an incline that was like pretty much impossible for a person to walk down. They said they couldn't really see the color of it because the sun light was gleaming on it, so they weren't sure if it was like kind of like a gray color or a dark brown or whatever it was. But that's the last of the reports I've listed here. And there's a few hoaxes where, I guess you were talking about earlier about how there's probably a lot of meth heads down there. So I think that might be what these three, if you want to hear those. Then the rest of them are the reports I included on the Bigfoot map. And I labeled three as being from probably DuBois County, but most likely they were from Crawford County, I think. It's hard to like determine where sightings have taken place. So a lot of people just say, "Oh yeah, I just sighting at Patoka Lake." They don't really say what part of the lake.
Yeah, because
So
people don't understand. There's like almost 3 different counties that lake encompasses, like Crawford,
right,
Orange, and DuBois.
apparently most of it was in DuBois actually.
And that's probably closer to the dam side of the lake.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go over. I mean, it's fun going over like things that are totally hoaxes just to show you things you shouldn't like take for granted, or I mean, take at face value. Sorry, not granted. So in actually December 2018, which like got me excited because that's the same month and time of year that I had my sighting. This person took a photo of a supposed Sasquatch in Marengo, Indiana, but that person like went into like the supernatural angle, and I just definitely think this creature is biological. It goes after deer. It seems to follow natural resources like water and stuff. So I definitely think it's not like a supernatural entity. So I have since just forgot about the Marengo photo. You'll see that in the video I went over going over my sighting. And there was another person. I'm not sure what part of Crawford County they said this took place, but they said they found like an entire group of Sasquatch living in the woods, and that they studied them eating walnuts and getting their teeth black because of it. It was just weird. Now there was another even weirder story of a person that messaged me from about a Patoka Lake experience where they said out from their boat they saw a Sasquatch that was trying to lure them into the woods, and it was like had a boner. So that's pretty weird.
I mean, I've heard that from a couple of people, that apparently you can definitely tell. And that's a whole other kind of conversation, I think, where it definitely it has a whole other level to the whole biological versus supernatural conversation, for lack of a better phrase. But gosh, that's kind of nuts. It's you have an encounter like that, and that's the first thing that comes out of your mind is the thing that's burned into your head. But maybe it would be,
Yeah.
hadn't happened to me, so I can't really comment on that. But I know we were talking about the Patterson Gimlin film, right? And we were wanting to talk about this a little bit, especially in the second half of the show, right? And all the extra things that have been going on about it recently, and what our thoughts on it were, what your thoughts on it were, and any of the new revelations surrounding the discussion, just to kind of get yourself out there on that.
Yeah. So I wanted to say that I actually think your video, like your first video on capturing Bigfoot, was great. So there's a lot of people that are just like totally biased when it comes to this footage, you know. So you have there's like a few videos where just like, oh yeah, well the Patterson Gimlin's film fake. There's no chance that's real. I noticed like there's a few channels I subscribe to, like Thorn's Jungle and Truth is Scarier in Fiction. They were definitely like supporting the idea that this was a hoax, even though like there's just no evidence that it is yet. So then there's like other people that are like, yeah, it's 100% real. I don't think we should really be in that area either. I think we should just like wait for the documentary to officially come out before we draw any conclusions on it. So I guess I'll go ahead and talk about like some of my problems I have with the Patterson Gimlin film, and then also some of the things that I find convincing about it. So I do find it very strange that, of course, like Patterson was Patterson and Bob. They both searched for the creature, and that's exactly what they found. What are the chances of that? Like people could spend their entire life searching for Sasquatch and not find anything. And I also find it strange that the creature was out in the open. So it doesn't seem like that would be the case with all the sightings I've heard that seem to take place deep in the woods. And the creature seems like they definitely avoid being out in the open where they can be in plain sight. And I guess another aspect that I'll go over is like how large the feet are. Now, it shouldn't be that weird because, I mean, it's a Bigfoot, it should have big feet. But if you compare that to these 18-inch feet to all the footprints I've seen from Indiana, the largest is only 17 inches in Indiana. I find it strange that they're just they're so large in comparison to the rest of its body as well. So it's been determined that the Patterson Gimlin film, I mean the Patty creature, is likely 6'3", and that's just so much larger than compared to its feet. So like 18 inches and 6'3" is pretty insane. I might want to
Definitely.
redo that segment a little bit. I kind of stumbled a little bit there at the end. I don't know.
No, I like to do it live. You know, it leads us to a
Okay.
little bit more authenticity, you know, in a world where we have to have the entire YouTube program scrub us to make sure we're not AI. Stuff like that definitely goes a long way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And let's just go ahead and talk about that a little bit, right? Like the the footprints of this thing was big. You know, there were multiple people that investigated the place surrounding the sighting and the filming in the weeks afterwards. There was a lot of footcasts being made. I do remember reading somewhere that it wasn't exactly like he went straight to Bluff Creek and just happened to film Patty that
Yeah.
day.
Obviously, a lot of preparation there.
Well, they
Like,
were
who knows?
also apparently driving around and building a network of like almost lookouts. Like if anybody heard anything to call him. And he had built a network from Washington all the way down to California, and somebody had heard some sightings coming through the Bluff Creek area, and they decided to hitch down there before the trail got cold. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but I do think that it wouldn't make much sense otherwise, right? Like, I do also think, man, that is a pretty opportune shot right there in the middle of the creek bed. Whenever, like you said, this thing seems to prefer stealth. And I've also heard plenty of reports where this thing's almost caught in mid water. I don't know how you feel about the Cass River Bigfoot video.
I haven't heard of that one.
It's the one where the red Bigfoot is wading through the river and it looks like it has a baby in its clutch.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Just show that to me.
Now that one came out a couple of years ago. That actually came out one of our subscribers. It's less than 10 miles from his house. It's kind of crazy.
Well, I think I might know what you're talking about. Yeah. Was it like pretty recently? So
Within a
it's
few
pretty.
years.
Yeah. Okay.
I can definitely send it to you. It's kind of crazy. So I think the phenomenon is going to continue regardless of what ends up coming out in that documentary, right? I think that in the whole of it, the conversation is infinitely more complex than just what one video and one documentary can do. Like, yeah, the Patterson Gimlin film has carried the torch for a long time, but it isn't like we don't have the Sierra sounds. And there are plenty of other videos that people find completely unexplained and interesting, right? So I just think that it's important that we try to find a way to make this conversation more palatable to more people, because there are quite a lot of things that's happened over the years, right? And especially this year when it comes to skepticism and the scientific view of Bigfoot over, especially the last 4 to 5 months, the loss of Jeffrey Meldrum, and with this documentary coming out, right? So the ability to have a reasonable conversation about this is something that I do feel is rather important moving forward. And it isn't like the people that you've talked to in the whole of it, like you've got some outliers, but it's not like you're talking to people that are crazy. You're talking to everyday people that are like, I saw something nuts. It makes me feel nuts to tell you that I saw this, right? And I think that is something that can be a lot more palatable for somebody who's on the fence, or somebody that thinks maybe you guys are just nuts and smoking something out there in the woods, right? Because one of the only ways that we're going to get more information on this subject is if we have more awareness for it and we have more people looking for the subject. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So those were just my cons of the Patterson Gimlin film. I do think that most likely the Patterson Gimlin film is still real because it's just so consistent with all the reports that I've heard. It swings its arms just like a lot of sightings. The arms are very long. You could see they reach the knees, and it turns its body, which is a aspect I've heard in a lot of sightings, and it doesn't really stand out that much during the sighting. I mean, during the film, but whenever you listen to sightings, it definitely sounds a lot more interesting. You would expect like a hoax to like turn its head rather than turning its entire body to look at something, but that's what a lot of sightings describe. And I really don't think anybody walks quite like the creature in the footage. So I work at Walmart, and I of course like see dozens of people a day. And whenever people are just casually walking, they don't raise their legs like at a 50-degree angle, and they don't like sway their arms to quite such significant degree. And of course, there's a lot of aspects of that documentary that favor the idea that Bob Hieronymus was in fact involved with the footage, and I seriously doubt that. So Bob Hieronymus apparently lived in Yakima, which was 400 miles away, and then of course to get to the Patterson film site, you have to travel several hours on horseback. That seems like a lot of work for somebody that doesn't really come forward to their involvement until like the 90s. So there's other aspects in the footage that also don't make sense. So apparently Bob Gimlin was 6'1" back in the day, and of course the creature in the Patterson Gimlin film is determined to be 6'3", and I don't think there's any way you could like make him an extra 2 foot taller to end up in the footage. And there's a lot of claims he's made, like saying that there was a football or a football helmet that they put in the costume to give the appearance of a sagittal crest, and I find that extremely unlikely. That really, there's like just so many things going on with like the Bob Hieronymus story that's just really eyebrow raising. So that's my thoughts on the Patterson Gimlin film.
The hard part about having Bob Hieronymus with any part of a Bigfoot argument is that he's kind of a known bad actor, and anytime a reasonable argument comes across his desk, he has a bad tendency of moving the goalpost. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be something. I do think that by the time they do release this documentary, I do think the hype behind it is going to be largely gone. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the marketing tactic or just the fact that people just have less time to think about something like that. So outside of the people that are hyper invested in the topic, like, they might be done with it by the time it actually comes out. We don't know. We just know that we haven't heard much about it, and their Reddit AMAs have kind of been hit or miss. And the more time that passes, the more that NDAs expire on people that have worked on it, and the things that they've came out with to say about their time working on it has been rather curious, to say the least. So that in itself is a wild ride, and I can't wait until it does come out for us to actually see it and talk about it. But I do know, for the most part, that when people talk about Bigfoot, they talk about Washington, right? They talk about Oregon, they talk about Canada. And while that is the majority of Bigfoot reports that you do get, it's not that that is the only place that you can see these things. And for a lot of us out here in the Midwest, or out here in the South, or in this weird place in between called Kentuckiana, there are plenty of stories of weird things that are out here in the woods. And there are people like us that are out here trying to find it and trying to get to the bottom of what is going on here. So if you do have a story that you do want to talk to us about, you do have an encounter, and you want to be on either of our shows, we're going to list our contact information down here below. That way, on this video, if you want to talk to either of us, you absolutely can. See, the YouTube channel that Eric runs here, EricQuests, he's usually in the Indiana area. However, SEBRO here, we do have people in the Ohio area, the Kentucky area, and in the Alabama area. So if you've got a report in any of these areas, feel free to let us know, and we'd love to look into that for you. So,
And we keep everything anonymous, so you have nothing to worry about there.
Absolutely. We don't like to air people's dirty laundry unless they're cool with it, right? The big thing is that we do bring awareness to the topic, that we do have more people coming forward in order to make this seem less crazy to everybody else. And this conversation and this topic has made big strides over the decades when it comes to becoming a niche topic into something that most people has at least heard about. You know what I mean? Back when we were kids, like, shoot, having a Bigfoot encounter meant you were nuts. Okay, you were that weirdo. You know, nowadays it's not that crazy to talk about. And that's a good thing. And we want to continue that and make sure that it's not a wild thing to talk about, even after all the wild things that's happened this year. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, this has been EricQuests, the guy that founded the Indiana Bigfoot Mapping Project. We're going to have a collaboration here, so down below, if you are interested in following any of our channels, we'll have that down there for you. Like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to try to either have this interview also on his channel, or the collaboration have it linked. We're going to figure that out. Not entirely sure how that works right now. So, with that, guys, this has been the Southeast Bigfoot Research Organization. We appreciate y'all's time, and we'll, guys, have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
So this kind of looks like two large footprints, probably about 14 inches long. I don't know if I could show it very well on my camera. You kind of make it out. Now there's another one right next to it. Looks like it's not sure which way it's supposed to be facing. But they're only like maybe a little less than 2 foot apart. So I'm gonna say human.